but I'll try and pay attention to that. So
What's the other way that you set the meeting up? Like
well,
just allowing people to come in?
yeah,
Mm.
exactly. Usually I have like a tech buddy who's riding shotgun with me, and she like keeps an eye on that, and so I can sort of concentrate on the conversation. But add that to the list of things that went wrong tonight.
I mean, you say wrong, I say an opportunity to challenge ourselves and adapt to the new world. I tell you all the time, man. During the pandemic and everything else, should be a very forgiving world, a more forgiving world. We came from this very harsh, very stark, very survivalistic type of routine. Um, it's time for everybody to just relax. Remember that we all can get sick and forgive mistakes.
Good lesson there. Yeah. If we have learned nothing else from the pandemic, we should learn flexibility.
Trying to tell you, man.
All right.
I've definitely learned it.
I'm trying to learn it. That is not a native language to me.
Yeah.
I'm a pretty, I don't want to say I'm rigid by any means, but I have a pretty structured life. I have some pretty established
Mm,
routines, and the pandemic has actually been good for a lot of those,
mm,
because pre-pandemic I was in the office all the time, constantly interrupted, always being pulled from one meeting to the next and so forth.
mm-hmm,
And I've actually really enjoyed being at home. I'm working 2 days a week in the office now, but there was a stretch when I was home all the time, and I'm still home
mm-hmm,
3 days a week, and I actually like it because I can um, it's not quite as interruptible time. So yeah, I am
mm-hmm,
still learning to be
mm-hmm.
flexible, but um, yeah, there we go. Okay, well, so why don't we get started on this?
Yeah,
I'm gonna at least pretend that we have a studio audience with
that's
us.
fine. Yeah, that's fine.
And Lance Newman, welcome to our community conversations. Uh,
Love.
I, I'm Kyle Kramer. I'm the executive director of the Earth and Spirit Center, and I'm also the host of the Earth and Spirit podcast. So I guess that makes me a fellow podcaster with you because you have your own podcast as well.
Yeah.
And I love hosting these community conversations where we have uh, a live audience uh, in which we can uh, throw some questions around to a larger group if they show up. That is,
Right.
and Lance, you may occasionally hear me talking to Joe, like Joe Brown is his name. He's our sound engineer. So
Mm.
if I like screw something up, I'll just say, hey Joe, cut that out. So hey Joe, cut out the piece about like the live studio audience. I'll try not to mess with that or mention that in case nobody shows. Then this conversation.
Kyle, again, we just before we started, man, we talked about flexibility, right? We talked about going with the flow. We talked about happy mistakes, right? So don't worry, Joe. He's not going to give you a hard time, man. You don't have to cut anything. Um, and our audience still exists, right? So I do podcasts with my brother, and we just, we assume that somebody will watch or listen to this at some point, and we're talking to them. Thank you for coming. If you're listening to this, thank you for tuning in. If you're watching this, we're here for you. We appreciate you.
I am already learning life lessons from Lance Newman, and more to come. So Lance, let's get to know you. I know about you more than I know you, and I don't
Mm-hmm.
know all that much about you, only by reputation from one of our other mindfulness instructors who has brought you in as a guest instructor or a guest poet in residence
Mm-hmm.
for some of our mindfulness classes. So I want to throw the Simon Sinek question at you
Okay.
in and ask you, what's the why that drives what you do and maybe kind of forms the core of who you are, and how did you come to that why?
Yeah. No. I would say, I mean, the quick answer to the why is I always believed in a passion. The saying is, you get a job you like, you'll never work a day in your life, right? And I've always kind of believed that working your passion isn't working at all, right? You're contributing in some way. Now, as far as poetry and just my awareness of myself, my awareness of my voice, writing and verbal. That happened in like middle school. I was getting bullied, and I wrote a poem about my bullies and recited it at the talent show, and I stopped getting made fun of, right? So I was like, okay, this might be a way to uh, make people leave me alone because I'm vocal. And then with teachers, we could have a disagreement, but as long as I constructed my disagreement in an artistic way, or just a well put way, they would come to see the light sooner or later. So why? Because I am not the only person here. I'm not the only person experiencing this reality. And if it's bad for me in any way, then one can imagine it can also be bad for another.
So I probably jumped the gun. I asked you this deeper, sort of values-driven, philosophical question, but I wonder if we can zoom back out to the practical. So um, I know that you're a poet,
Mm-hmm.
and I know that you have an enterprise called Spread Love. Can you
Mm-hmm.
tell us a little bit about the work that you do in your Spread Love efforts?
Yeah, definitely. Spread Love Enterprise encapsulates my many hats. I like to refer to myself as a Renaissance man. Um, People like to put people in boxes, and people are introduced to people during different circumstances. In most circumstances, I'm introduced to people as a poet. In more circumstances, I'm introduced to people as an educator or a performance and public speaking instructor. But like, I do visual art. I'm editor. I shoot videos. I take pictures. I'm a photographer. I build structures. I produce these huge city projects such as Love in the Street. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But all these things kind of feed that purpose and passion, and Spread Love Enterprises, the umbrella in which all those hats sit.
And how long have you been at Spread Love Enterprises?
I established my company in 2013, but I had been working my curriculum out and uh, working like two jobs, and then also teaching in schools and community centers and detention centers for free a lot of times, and just fine tuning my curriculum. Uh, and that I've been doing that since, I would say, 2010.
Okay. So yeah, tell me about some of your current projects. You mentioned one you wanted to touch on. I don't know if you want to jump into that now or
I mean, we'll be talking here all night, Cal. I have several projects in the works. Another hat that I do is I'm an actor. I'm a screenwriter, right? So I've written um, three poetry operas, and when I say poetry opera, think of Hamilton. Before Hamilton was Hamilton, though. Like, my
ah,
poetry operas came out around 2012, 13, 14. There was the Smoketown poetry opera, the West End poetry opera, um, The Blood Always Returns. And I was a co-writer with other artists within this cohort. So, I mean, we established that. That was 5, 6, 7 years ago, but we won the Art Place America grant. But coming up in February, I will be playing the role of Mercutio in Actors Theater upcoming Romeo and Juliet. So that's another hat that I'm kind of really excited about coming out.
wow. My guess is you don't have one day that looks anything like the next, do you?
Absolutely not.
And as you said, you are not working a day in your life. Is that what is that how
Come
it's
on,
looking?
come on. I'm doing the things that feed my soul, and in turn, I feed the soul of others.
Hmm.
Right.
Let's talk about social justice.
Okay.
I know that you have some commitments in regards to justice issues, and uh, I guess I want to start, if we could, by taking a real top level view in terms of how you think what your theory of social change is, not in a really, I guess, not in an abstract way, but how do systems and structures get evolved toward justice, and what is your role in that, or what do you think our role can be, say, in the Louisville community, or in, with a focus on a particular place like the West End? um,
Yeah.
yeah, what kind of how are you envisioning like these levers of change, and how you find those levers and how you pull them?
I mean, Cal, you love asking big questions. I'm going to try to give a small answer though. But what I'm thinking, I think a complete reversal, an acknowledgement. We like to tout color blindness as if
Mm.
that is the progressive goal, but the goal is to see color, to acknowledge color, to try to get color right. You know what I'm saying? Like, um, it means a lot when you're more than transactional, right? Our society is a transactional society. A lot of the things we learn in school, people are learning in school, and it takes half of their adulthood to unlearn some of the bad habits, to unlearn some of the things, and to learn new timeline issues. So it's all about the timeline. It's all about the um, scope and the commitment of somebody else. When we talk about justice, justice has changed forms throughout history, right? And what was popular justice in one era is not the same popular justice in another era. Um,
What's an
but
example of
I've
that? Just curious. How
um,
has justice evolved? Because I think of justice as these like immutable, eternal kind of concept of, fairness and equity and so forth. But so I hadn't
yeah,
really thought about
but
justice evolving.
that's like, and if we're going to talk about specifics, and like little examples, like, you can pick any segregation law, any law that has been on the books to disenfranchise any other group of people. This is just like a telltale sign of injustice, right? It's like, that's what I mean when I say popular justice. Like, in one era, it's okay for people to make people sit in the back of the bus,
Oh,
but
I
in
see.
this era, you understand that just that we don't see that as just. And I think that our scope of just and what is just will continue to move past. It seems that justice is about 50 to 60 years late, so the things that we think are unjust now, 60, 50 years in the future, things will be legalized, right? There won't be these prohibitions locking people up and so forth.
Okay, so it may be the case like it was never all right to have, say, segregated busing, but eventually, the popular view on that, as you describe it, have caught up to what the real truth of the matter was. Yeah, I suspect that maybe in 50 years or less than that, we'll look back as a culture on, say, what we did to animals to raise them in confinement for, meat production and slaughterhouse and all
Yeah.
that, and we'll think, what were we thinking?
Yeah.
um,
Oh, do you know how many things? We were. Can you believe we use fossil fuels? Like, can you
right.
believe that we cut down trees and didn't sustain our habitat or our living space? It's like, retrospect is 2020. Hindsight is 2020, as
Yeah.
they say.
Absolutely. Well, let's jump into poetry. You're among many other things, you're a poet. And tell me a bit more about how you found your way to poetry. You mentioned being bullied as a young child and responding with a poem. Was that your first poem, or were you already writing poetry, and so that was a natural reflex for you? How's the
Very,
role of poetry come about in your life?
very much so. 6, 7, 8, 9. These years, I used to change the words to songs. I was very creative in how I made my remakes of different songs and replaced the words. And um, middle school, kind of the end of sixth grade, I would say, I started to form my own words. Started to take those remakes and create poems out of them. Like, oh, this song inspired me enough to change the words. Maybe it'll inspire me to create my own words based off the emotion that it was emitting. You know, um, it's good to have parents that are studious, so to speak. My parents were just hard workers. My father was big on like writing, so like if we did something wrong, you know, there was like an apology letter that had to be written, and punishments with mother were definitions, and she was already well spoken and quote unquote well spoken. What it is she code switched well. My mother was very good with code switching, and we're going everywhere, and it's okay. I'm just kind of telling you all about myself. Also, something that your audience, have to kind of understand about just Black people in general, that like we have to assimilate to the popular mainstream culture, right? We have to speak properly, we have to enunciate, we have to um, change ourselves in front of other people. And my parents were really good at that, like very, very good at that, to the point where what it ingrained in me is that you can be yourself. Sometimes you just have to force people to swallow it. Like you could be yourself. Sometimes you have to yell at them with a poem. So poetry just became that vehicle. Poetry just became that way that I was able to speak my mind and not get penalized for it. Because any other way, you'll get penalized for it, right? If you're, especially for Black people, you know what I mean? Like, we can go off on somebody because we think we're being treated unfairly, but that's not received, right? That's seen as loud, that's seen as all these negative things.
Or in some contexts, it could put you in danger.
Most contexts,
Yeah,
it puts you in danger, right? So
but
it's like,
but poetry is like a safer container for expressing yourself.
Absolutely.
Without having to conform to those other expectations.
And it's the art form that spans the social constructs we put on people, like race and everything, and gender and all this other stuff. Like, poetry is the imitation of life, and it is through poetry that we see our reflection as humans, as individuals. And that is in everybody's culture. Everybody's culture has an oral tradition. The Iliad and what's the other Homer book? The Odyssey. These were all spoken word, long spoken word performances before they were written down. And this is what we have to remember about our culture, that the word, the spoken word, will always hold power and weight within our community. So like the inauguration, did you see you seen Amanda's
oh my
poem?
Gosh, yes,
Right,
phenomenal.
it's like, and she spoke for America. She had the background, whatever background she wanted and had. But that's when it comes down to it, we all come from different walks of life, but we give our lives, spend our lives to America, and we want America to be beautiful. We want America to stand up for all the things that it says it stands up for. It's just, again, justice is not linear. It's ever moving compass, or ever moving like goal that we're trying to hit, and we miss the mark constantly until 50 years later we hit.
Yeah, well, I love how you describe poetry as kind of a common ground across cultures, a safe space, almost a bridge building enterprise. Because I'm thinking we're coming out of several years. I don't even know if we're coming out. We have for several years been in a place where the divides in our culture are just, they just seem at least to be widening and deepening. And it's a beautiful thought to me to consider that poetry may be a way that we can find each other again across these divides. Could
you imagine our senators and our representatives having to recite spoken word poems about bills and, you know, legislation that they were trying to get through. Like, it would be transformative. It would then create our lead. Our leaders would be the artists, and the artists are the ones that think creatively. Though they're the one that find the simplest solution for the most complicated issues.
Huh. You just blew a couple fuses in me trying to imagine our 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 legislators and our Congress people as spoken word poets. But as I sit with that for a couple seconds, it it makes some sense. I mean, they're all orators in a way,
Mm-hmm.
um, but and I wonder if it's not too far a stretch from the kind of uh, grandstanding oration that often happens in the hallowed halls of Congress to spoken word. I mean, shoot, it worked for Hamilton, right?
Now I say it again. This is what we came from. Like forefathers, and my forefathers, like your forefathers in the building, my forefathers in the other building, and like both are having these spoken word, passionate cries for independence, passionate cries for freedom. And it's like we're more alike than we are different. We're more alike than we are different. We just have 4 years. That's why you say it feels like it's widening, right? Uh, People think that Obama is post-racial. People think that those 8 years we were coming together, but we didn't know that there was slowly a divide being created, right? Trump came, he highlighted that divide. He, polarized it, and now we're left with the pieces to figure out how we can actually come back together.
Yeah, I've been thinking about that a lot over the past, well, particularly since January 6th, but even before that, realizing that the next administration has, well, as Biden said in his inaugural, just has all these heavy lifts to do in terms of healing and trying to promote unity. But I realize the more I hope that good work can be done by the Biden administration, that we can't farm out all of that work to
No,
the federal government.
yeah,
I mean, as wonderful or however Biden will be as a president, um, that doesn't get us off the hook
mm-hmm.
for doing that healing work right here on the
Mm-hmm.
local level.
Well, just so and I say to that, there are everybody has their realm of influence. Everybody has their um, truth that they need to find to properly heal. I think the federal government has to answer for whatever they did federally, like correct those mistakes, and that is all you're responsible for. Locally, we have a giant divide called the Ninth Street divide, right?
In Louisville, yeah.
Out of the 25 um, most poorest country or counties in the nation, 10 are in Kentucky, right? There is a economic, social, it's so many levels, and each of us, wherever we are on that level, have to be responsible for the healing in that realm.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking at your sweatshirt right now, and it's got spread love on the front of it. And I know, because you and I've talked about this before, that love is a pole star virtue and value and practice for you. And I also know that love is probably one of the most overused and under or misunderstood
Mm-hmm.
words. I'm
Mm-hmm.
wondering if you can share a little bit more about what love means to you, especially in this context of the healing work that we're called to do, both in Louisville, whether that's healing racial divides or healing socioeconomic divides. What has love got to do with it? Or
Right. Oh, I like that. I like that, Cal. Very nice segue. Um, Love is God. God is love. No matter your background, no matter your spiritual setting or practices, you believe that your God loves, and you live your life trying to be like that God. But let's say you're an atheist. Let's say that you are agnostic and you just don't believe in any of it. You still have experienced love. You still have an inkling of what love is, and you still can choose to practice it, or you can choose the latter. Um, I came to the awareness very young that love was the above everything. The universe created itself, and we exist, and it was only love that kept us together. It was only love that uh, kept us from killing one another, that had us create farms and plots of land. It's like that's the answer. If people have questions all the time, and I have always seen it as the answer. So if somebody is wronging me or somebody is doing something to me, I can give love in that. Like love makes you the bigger person. And people think, oh, forget being the bigger person because I'm just getting walked on. In some contexts, you're right, and you shouldn't let people walk on you, but you also don't have to give hate or put the energy. Okay, what's love got to do with it? Energy cannot be created or destroyed. It just takes different forms. If love is an energy, then it has other forms. It does not dissipate. So you could love someone and be in a relationship with them forever, and then you all break up. That love may turn to a lot of different things. It may turn to anger. It may turn to jealousy. It may turn to apathy. It could turn to a lot of things, but love was the core of that, and you can always bring it back.
Yeah. So a lot of things are going through my head right now. I clearly you're thinking about love far beyond, say, I love my spouse, or I
Mm-hmm.
love my girlfriend, or I love my new iPhone, or I mean, what?
Oh, that's good, Kyle. But that's what I'm saying. People confuse love with possession, and
Mm,
that is mispracticing love. You don't possess anything but your own heart, mind, and soul, and it is those things that you must be concerned about and give love to first before you can admit it to other folk.
right. And I'm thinking about Martin Luther King. We just recently celebrated Martin Luther King Day, and he and so much of the civil rights movement used the language of love in such a robust and muscular sort of way that this
Mm-hmm.
wasn't just romantic. It wasn't just for church on Sundays. It was
Mm-hmm.
this force
Mm-hmm.
that enabled them to stand up for justice and to stand up in the face of all kind of abuse and attack. And so that's the sense I'm getting from you. Am I reading too much into that in terms of
Um, yeah, no, well, you're there, but you have to keep going, right? So, what is the root of all evil?
oh, a quiz for me? What is the root of all evil? Um, Apathy.
Ooh, the love of money.
Okay, okay, I'll take
So
that
this is
one.
this is this is what the Bible. This is a that's a Christian. That's a Bible scripture. So the root, they say that the root of all evil is um the love of money. They don't say is money. People misquote it all the time and say the root
Mm-hmm.
of all evil is money, but it's the love of money. Now I say that there, boom. When you Dr. King and everything that he was espousing and spouting about love was true. And then he talked about that love of money and said that there must be financial restitution. And then he got assassinated. Do you see what I'm saying? So like you can there was love that helped them stand on their feet and uh, kind of be nonviolent, but there's also the love of uh, not of money, but the need for, like in Black people's case, the need for money, while in other people's case, it's just the love of money. And that Dr. King's and the poor people's movement, they started to move towards an economic justice. And I believe that the economic justice part of that conversation is one of the most important. I mean, um, people, cultures, human beings, individuals do not grow, develop properly in inconsistent and unstable situations. They just don't, and that's not their fault. It's like, where's the love? Yeah, where's the
Hmm.
love?
So do you have any poetry about love that you might be able to share with the listeners, whether it's
Um,
spontaneous or memorized or your own or someone else's? Is there a poem that captures some of this for you?
hmm, let's hope let's see if it's in the recesses of my mind. Um, oh, eh, I'm trying to remember a poem, but I'll just give you the bits and pieces of it. But it talks about how God and oxygen, or love and oxygen, how we can't see them, but they both help to keep us alive. How
Mm.
before we inhale or exhale a breath, you know, we're filling ourselves with that oxygen. I believe love or God, and which again, whichever God you believe, but love primarily. Um, it's something that we take into our lungs. You're thinking about poems. Uh, mm-mm-mm. Yes. No. Well, we'll get to the poem. Let's get to the poem. Let me
Okay.
give me. Let me flip through a page or two.
Okay. Okay. I'll you
Mhm.
you flip as you need, and I'll kind of keep moving, and you just tell me when you're ready, and we'll jump in for it.
Oh, that
Um,
sounds good.
so Lance, we got to know you actually in the context of a mindfulness class,
Hmm.
where, as I mentioned earlier, one of our instructors brought you in as a poet to engage our mindfulness students.
Hmm.
And I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about your understanding of mindfulness or your experience or practice of mindfulness, and what role that's played in your life, in your poetry, in your practice of spreading love.
Um, I am mindful about the smallest things or energies. Karma, like my philosophy is like is just this mixed bag of other religions, but just kind of bringing out the light in those. But karma is one of those things that I subscribe to. In that, growing up, when I did wrong, like I knew I shouldn't have been doing something, I something would happen, something bad would happen to me, and I would always equate that with a punishment from the universe or from love, saying, you didn't choose love, so you have to go with the alternative. And because of that mindfulness, I am blessed. Like I treat people correctly. I don't have ill intent. I am humble enough to admit to my mistakes. I am smart enough to learn from those mistakes. And because of it, I have been successful. I have been put in rooms. I have uh, had my needs met by pure love. Karen speaks so highly of me. And I think that it's just I see you. Okay. In South Africa, they say subona when greeting somebody. They say subona. And I forget what the response is, but subona means I see you. And then the
Mm.
response is I exist because you exist. Right. So it's that
Is that Ubuntu?
connecting.
Is Ubuntu the?
Um, no, well, it's I think it's Thosen,
Mhm.
or Cozen, as they would say, but that XHOSA. Um, but like that's another philosophy of my life. Like if I'm going to interact with somebody, I'm going to be myself. I'm going to try to connect with them, and vibrations are real. I believe that people are on different levels of awareness of themselves. When we are kind of concerned externally, we tend to not hear or filter or think about what's coming out of our mouth, what our actions are doing. what our intent is. But when we go inside, because all that's fixed inside. But anyway, yeah, man. That's how love, karma is real. People can think that it's not. People can, continue to do bad things, but you attract the energy that you put out. It's science. This is not a disconnected world as they want you to think, right? We are very connected. Everything.
But I mean, I think I'd like to take some comfort, and maybe this is just my own misunderstanding, but a lot of times people think of karma as you do something bad and something's going to come around and whack you in the behind. But I think it works the other way too. And I hear yes. You go in that direction. Like,
yes, that's exactly
karma rewards acts of generosity and kindness, and that I was just listening recently to Jim Collins, who's a business author and researcher, and he has this concept called the flywheel, where you basically keep doing the disciplined action for the good, and you build up momentum with this flywheel that makes it harder and harder to stop this. So maybe it's a karmic flywheel of love and generosity that
exactly, Kyle. Yes. Before I even meet people, they are hit with my flywheel. Like, really, I honestly, man, I can't even stress, like, that is so true. When I give money away, I always get it back. Like, I get it back 3 times fold, right? To the point where I'm encouraged to give. Now, I understand the economic society we live in, i.e. capitalism, right? I understand the demand and supply and all these other things, and the faux philanthropy,
but let's be really clear. Capitalism is not a system built on love.
You said it, Kyle. I didn't say it. You said it.
I said it, and I stand behind it. It may have its merits, but it is not built on love.
And it's hard for love to survive in it. Honestly, I have not. It has not been a smooth ride whatsoever, and that love was challenged at every corner. But again, I think my flywheel is getting too big to stop, and it feels good. Honestly, it's very reassuring. It's like I worked towards something, I am reaping the benefits, continue to practice that, and I will reap bigger ones.
And my guess is those benefits don't just accrue to you, but
exactly
to your family and your community and those whom you love.
Exactly. The positions I've been put in have allowed me to put other people in positions, and not in a gatekeeper type of way, right? But more of I'm going to hold my foot in the door. They open the door. Now it's time for all of us to get in, and let's change this community for the better. Louisville has a long way to go, man. We are still top 10, top 12 most segregated city in the nation. The wealth gap or medium income of an East End resident is $60,000 to $80,000, while the median income for a West End resident is $20,000, 15 to 20,000. And we can easily, Louisville could be the first metropolitan city to cure its homeless situation. Like, it literally could get all this land, it could invest the money, and it would save millions a year from cleanup, from police response, from medical issues and hospital visits, like all the things we do to maintain the homeless instead of help the homeless. You know what I mean? We criminalize things. We criminalize love. Honestly, that's what it comes down to. Like, I'm not sure if you've seen the article about the guy in Florida, the priest in Florida, who's been arrested multiple times for feeding the homeless. He lives in some city in Florida, and there's an ordinance that you can't feed the homeless, and he does it continuously and goes against it, right? It's like, how could you, again, justice? Like, how could that be unjust?
Right. Well, I think he must be following a higher law, a
Mm.
higher justice.
Mm. Yeah, man.
So what about, I just keep thinking, Lance, about Louisville and all of its problems. I mean, this is the city where Breonna Taylor was killed.
Mhm.
This is one of the epicenters outside of Minneapolis, is one of the places where racial tensions have just completely ignited. And I mean, it's been a long time coming. This is, I think, a necessary part of the process.
Yeah, definitely.
Where, what do you think's possible in Louisville, and what can poetry do? What can love do? What how do you see these values that you've kind of made Polestar for yourself? How can they help uh, bridge these particular divides in a really divided city? I know we talked about that sort of in the abstract, but what is
Yeah.
that looking like, boots on the ground in Louisville?
It is looking very pessimistic, I
Really?
tell you, Kyle. Yeah, it's not like you said it, what can poetry and love do? And in my mind I said nothing.
Yeah,
Like I've been
because you, I mean, I'm sorry to interrupt, but
No, it's good.
I'm thinking you're sitting in a room with a bunch of people in suits and with a lot of power, and I'm sure they're thinking, what what in the world can these soft fuzzy things do for us compared to um, economic development and all of the all the things that would fit on a spreadsheet,
Mm-hmm.
or all the things that would fit in a bank account,
Mm-hmm.
compared to um, a poet who is a wandering bard of love.
Right.
I'm just trying to imagine. You said you've been invited into a lot of rooms.
No, I
Have,
have. I've,
have
I've
you?
I went to the mayor's house. He invited me to his house for Thanksgiving one year. So it's
Yeah.
like,
So when
you
you're in
know,
front of these people who have the conventional forms of power,
mhm.
um, how how do you react?
Unwillingness to take action. This is at some point it goes out of our hands,
Mm-hmm.
and all we can do is, that it's raining. If the person is outside and wants to get wet, have to make the decision to go to a dry place or get an umbrella. And there are people in power who have been put in power, and I'm not talking just about the mayor, but everybody. But um, and they've been put in power by these regular, everyday, the status quo, right? It's taken 100 years for all these kind of things to happen, uh, and we still practice century years old, what electoral college, these things. There's these things that um, are you're grandfathered into, and I don't think the people in those positions of power are willing up to give up any power. I mean, that's normally how power goes, right? Once you get some of it, to tear it away, and that takes love, right? That takes a love that people aren't willing to engage with. So it's cool to have love at your house for dinner, but it's another thing to listen to what love says and actually do what love says.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's justice. That's like justice
Yeah,
is the practical workings out of what love requires.
yeah, definitely. And we're not there yet. We're just not there yet, Cal.
No.
Everybody's well, our memory is very short, and we think of time as this really big thing. But if we really knew the timeline, we would understand that this is just a blip. And furthermore, it would help us change how that blip looks. But we'll see. With the internet, people won't be forgetting things very soon at all. So uh, maybe it'll start to imprint our memory, and we'll learn from the mistakes. Because what's the saying? Uh, if you don't learn from your mistakes, they're bound to happen again.
Right. Yeah. Well, what have any poems occurred to you that have either been helpful guides for you, or that speak your truth in challenging times like this?
Yeah, I will. I can recite a little bit from. So I switched the channel and asked the panel for their opinion, because all I see are reality shows with poor people locked in a prison, as if black is not a color of the prism, just a 2-day description. Louisville has been known on First 48, starring the killer and the victim. We can get popular off of both. The second one isn't recommended, because the only beef families have is how much it costs for our tombstones to be printed. But I see fat cats in my alley collecting garbage and getting rich from it. My trash can is made of gold. The bundles of paper with incomplete poems, incantations that never came to fruition, manifestations that only feed my frustration, they're touted as a flag, as if actions didn't speak louder than these words. Yeah. But it's like the fat cats is like
Beautiful.
you know, it's just way capitalism works, right? You have to, somebody has to, there needs to be hierarchies, there needs to be classes, right? There, that's why you don't tell people what you make, because you don't want to offend anybody. But the reality is the boss doesn't want to let people know who's getting paid what, and maybe it will be unfair and so on and so forth. So it's like there are these things that we're just, oh, my garbage. It's like they're working off our backs, the things that we, from our good efforts to our bad efforts, they both kind of feed this machine. And I always tell people it's not enough to change the cog in the machine that is racism, that is colonialism or imperialism or capitalism, any ism you want to put. You don't change a cog and then the machine stops working. That's not how it works. People are put in places so that the machine continues to work, just has a better look, or maybe more advanced, or just works a little faster, i.e. the new police chief, right? Like these are things that the city's not listening. That's what and you say, what can the local community do? I have no idea. It's out of my hands to really, other people have to start listening to people and actually taking action. Why would you hire a police chief that was the chief in Atlanta when Rashad Boykins was killed by police officers, and then resigned as a response to that incident? What do you think is going to happen here? Another incident is going to happen, and all she has to do is resign again. It's like, where is the, and we just had Breonna Taylor, we just had all these social L's. Why would you put this in place, right? So it's just, when moves like that happen, it's just like, what do you guys want me to do? I guess I just live in your city and you don't work for me. I don't pay taxes. I don't have any say in my life. And being a Black person, I can say that's pretty normal.
So that makes me think, Lance, of if love is this ubiquitous, powerful force in the universe, as you've described it, what you just described was the lack of love or the opposite of love.
Mm-hmm.
What do you do when you encounter such resistance to love, or such an absence of love? How do you I was about to say combat that, but that's not the right word.
Mm-hmm.
How does love overcome, here's the question. How does love overcome the obstacles to love?
Persistence.
Mm.
Yep. Persistence, and see, love is that beautiful light that never goes out. That's the beauty of it, really. It's like, no matter how low you get, if you believe in love, then you kind of see your situation different. You take the blows a little bit easier. You understand people's motives, and it doesn't hurt your feelings. It just makes you persist even more. It feeds. It's the like it's beautiful, right? If love is oxygen, hate is the flame, and love can make the hate grow, or love can douse the hate out and suffocate it from accessing it. That's really how I've kind of like, there's been in my career, especially in Louisville, there's been plenty of people that have um, treated me unfairly, done wrong by me. Um, uh, the stories we could get into, Kyle. There's plenty of people that have done wrong, but I'm having this interview with you, right? I just taught a workshop and I still have Romeo and Juliet coming out in February. So like they didn't stop anything, right? They just lost access to me. They lost access to the love that I was given, whether it was my content and my talent being provided for their programming and structuring, and then them like running off with it, running off of my curriculum, running off with like my planning and
Oh
all
my
these things.
God.
Yes, these things happen. And people made quarter millions of dollars off of these ideas and plans and everything else. But that's the thing that's the love that I understand, that is what a thief does. A thief takes because a thief cannot create itself. Before the creator, a creator can just create again, right? The creative and love in general, love can just keep giving it. You can take all the love you want. I have more. Yesterday, somebody stole some clothes out of my garage, but I wouldn't keep anything of value in my garage. But if you want it, if you need it, take it. It was a cold day. It was a full suitcase of my brother's like old college clothes. Like by all means, lug that thing around if that's what you need. I'm not hurt by it. I wish you would have just asked. You would have seen me give you more clothes than that. I might have bought you a whole winter suit, but you wanted to take, and that's fine. You can take. I have more love to give.
Wow. So love wins by persistence and by sort of flooding with generosity rather than stinginess. That's what I'm hearing you say.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah.
Hmm. Well, as we come to a close here, I'm I'd love to invite you to share if you had if you were like Amanda Gorman, we talked about
Mm.
her earlier, and you were up there in your yellow jacket in front of the entire nation and the entire world, what would you say? What healing words would you offer?
All things done in the dark come to the light, and many things left in the light find themselves in darkness. Choose where you would want to be and live that. Um, I think that us as a nation, um, I mean, there's really just it's really unfortunate just how America kind of was created. Um, yeah, you have to restart. You have to hit the restart button, and we'll see what people go to that. But I want to give encouragement. Um, I sometime am pessimistic. I'm a Pisces, so one fish going up, one fish going down at all times. Um, but there's a what is that quote? Um 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 um. Okay, no quote. Uh, yeah, do the best that you can, like to spread love. I mean, this is literally why spread love is my thing. It's like whatever decision you're about to make, do it in love. I promise you, you won't go wrong. Um, I promise you it'll pay off. Just like moving in love. I'm sorry I didn't have more poetry. I've been on my visual arts hat. My poetry hat, I'm putting that in the closet because it's been a heavy hat to wear in a city that doesn't recognize or value um, poetry. Like we value poetry, but we don't put value into poetry, unfortunately, in the city. And
Mm.
moving on to just switching lanes. Definitely moving more in the theater vein, definitely moving more in the production vein, definitely moving more to the on screen, camera, voiceover, and visual arts lane. So yeah.
Well, you've got just a multitude of talents, Lance, and I'm really grateful that you've shared this hour with us and that you are deploying all of those talents for the long game of love.
That's what it's all about.
Thank you so much, Lance.
No, I appreciate you, Cal, man. This was awesome. Awesome exchange, man. Thank you.
Yeah.